In this video, we're going to be talking about creative acoustical solutions for churches. I'm joined by Gavin Haverstick with Haverstick Designs. He's the brains behind a lot of amazing designs out there that you've seen at churches like the Belonging Co., as well as Passion City Church. And you've also designed studios for some pretty well-known people, some pretty incredible projects. So I've got his website pulled up here, and I want to just talk through some of these churches that you've worked on, and through the process, I think of these case studies, we'll be able to learn a little bit more how your brain works as you approach these acoustical issues that a lot of churches are well acquainted with. But we were talking earlier, the unfortunate thing about acoustical design is it's not an obvious thing that people don't really even realize they have a problem with it sometimes.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And our big thing with any sort of acoustical design is that we just want people to be able to communicate the message properly. And that could be worship through music, through actually hearing the sermon. Like all those things are important, and people worship in a different way. But our goal is just to make sure the environment you're in is not detracting from that experience. However you like to worship, that's great. It just needs to, the room doesn't need to be a detraction to that.
Let's take a look at Christ Fellowship in Port St. Lucie.
Yeah.
So that's in Florida, not too far from me there, just down the coast. And give us a little bit of the context. What was the issues they were dealing with here? Yeah,
so in this space is a new build, and they have multiple campuses, like 7 to 10 campuses, I don't know, in Florida, somewhere in that range. But this new building that they were building was a precast concrete structure. So it's one of those where they have the big concrete walls they lift up in place, and it's all concrete all the way around, concrete floor with thin carpeting. But then there's a steel ceiling as well. So,
and you think they do that because Florida hurricanes? Is that why it has to be concrete? Or
there's some of that. I mean, it's definitely a cost saver sometimes. Instead of having to build out drywall walls and insulation and framing and all that, just to have the concrete wall alone is sometimes a good thing cost-wise. But they built the thing, and then it's just an acoustical nightmare. You have concrete everywhere. Actually, drywall absorbs low frequency energy pretty well. Because sound waves hit this drywall and it flexes kind of like the shocks of your car would, and can absorb a little of that energy. And concrete's it's a concrete wall. It's not budging. And so when we did the model of this space, the reverb time, so the amount of time it takes for sound to decay by 60 decibels, in the low frequencies, it was 6.5 seconds long. So if you hit the room with a kick drum or something in that low frequency range, and it rings out for 6.5 seconds before it dies out. And that was before treatment, but we did a lot of different things with the wall treatment and the ceiling treatment to tame that. But the thing when you have a really long low frequency reverb tail, a lot of times the mids and highs don't have a long reverb tail, and so you're trying to bring the room back in balance, because you want everything to die out kind of similarly. Because if the low end lingers in a room like this, you lose intelligibility for speech. If someone's singing at the same time that music is going on, that low end's just masking it, and you can't understand words very well. So we ended up having to do these barrel diffusers on the walls. Some of the panels there are actually like have a perforated facing on the front face of it behind the fabric, so it absorbs low end 80% better, but absorbs the high end only half as much. And so it's just ways to being real strategic with how we treat the room so that it has a nice balance, and there's a nice acoustics rig that's in this space. And obviously you're investing in a really nice sound system. The room needs to play well with that.
So I see the panels on the side walls and the back walls. Is there anything on the ceiling?
Yeah, there's panels that are directly up against the ceiling. Sometimes we'll do banners that hang down or clouds that hang down, but in this case we kept it up above the sprinkler heads, and so there's just panels directly attached to the steel grid.
In most projects at churches like this, is it the integrator who reaches out to you for this help?
A lot of times, yeah. Sometimes we're just subcontracted through the integrator. This one happened to be Diversified that we did this one with. And occasionally the churches will reach out directly to us, but I'd say 80% of the time it's an integrator that gets us involved.
Let's go look at a completely different style of sanctuary. This one right here, Northeast Presbyterian Church.
Yeah, so this is a church that when we got involved with it, and this is a lot of times the case, is that churches don't want to see the acoustical treatment, because they may enjoy the aesthetics of their space. They just don't like the way that it sounds. And so when we were brought in, they said that they really didn't want to see any of the acoustical treatment. And that's a challenge, but it's something that we're
worked. I can't see it.
Yeah, we're kind of used to doing this. And in this space, what you see is those curved areas up on the left and right near the ceiling. Those, anytime you have a concave surface, it can focus energy to a center point. And so those are acoustically not desirable to have concave surfaces. Convex are better because sound hits it and just scatters into the room, but concave will focus it in. It's kind of like on the sidelines of a NFL game. You see the clear shield. They have a microphone facing the inner of that shield, so it can collect the energy and go in there. So.
When they designed this building back in the day, I wonder, did they want it like that to hear the congregation more? Or?
I don't think so. I think it was an architectural detail.
Okay.
Yeah, just something that looked nice. And but what we ended up doing is treating that surface with acoustical plaster, and it kind of sounds like a misnomer, but there's acoustical plaster looks like drywall or plaster, but it's absorptive.
That's cool.
And so. We did that. The other thing that we did in here is that balcony face. You can kind of see there's the cross-shaped trim that is there. Behind that used to be plywood, drywall, just a hard surface. So we ended up removing all of that and replacing it with acoustical panels, then putting the wood trim back in place. So at the end of the day, it's just a white fabric that looks like the drywall or plywood that was there before, but it disguises everything. And that's a lot of square footage on that balcony face. And anytime that we can get treatment on the balcony face or the rear wall of the church, that's where we focus on first, because those are really long, delayed reflections that can hurt the musicians on stage because of timing, but then also people in the audience. It's going to just be a distraction to what they're trying to hear.
Yeah, that's really well done. The the overall, because they have an LED wall right there, right, your display, and you can see the modern lighting fixtures, but it's a good it's tastefully done. I feel like appropriately to the style of the space. This other cool project you had here was more of a fellowship hall. Looks really cool. Kind of reminds me of like a wedding venue or something like that. Where you have like a reception. But yeah, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so that one's in Ohio, Troy, Ohio, and the church had existed for a long time, and then they added this fellowship hall on, and the architect was actually the pastor's son, and I've actually done some more work with him over the years. His name's Mike Twiss, and he said that honestly he didn't think about the acoustical ramifications of what he was designing. It's hard floor, like a poured floor. You've got glass, you've got drywall, and then the ceiling was just wood. And they had actually had a different consultant come in and give them a report, and they just didn't feel comfortable with it because that report said, put 2,000 square feet of fabric-wrapped acoustical panels in there, and it doesn't matter where you place them. So that's not true. Obviously it's important where you put acoustical materials, and so they had me come in as a second opinion, but one of the first things they said to me was, you cannot touch the ceiling. Like, the ceiling is off limits, and the unfortunate thing is, after testing, it was very clear the ceiling was a big part of the problem. It's a...
Because the wood paneling, how does wood interact with the sound waves?
So wood is mostly reflective. It does give a kind of a warm musicality, warmth to that sound, and so wood is kind of a nice surface. However, it's still reflective, and like with it being like an A-frame there, it just focused sound back down to the floor, which was also reflective, which just causes more and more problems. Kind of snowballs from there. So I came up with a plan on how to treat the ceiling without it being visually obtrusive. Like, if you just put fabric-covered panels up there, it kind of ruins that look of the all-natural wood ceiling. So we hung these clouds down. There's actually about 6 inches of absorption above it, but then the wood slats that you see there are spaced out with a little bit of an air gap in between them. And we actually spaced it out based on the testing. You could there's some math you can do. The width of the slat, the depth of the slat, and the space in between them, you can tune those clouds to be absorptive at certain frequencies more than others. And so we did that, used the exact same wood that the ceiling was made out of, and then they actually said they liked the look of the room after the clouds more than they did before, which was great.
Yeah, visually, it kind of breaks up the ceiling a little bit.
Yeah,
I think so. It's really, again, it's really tasteful, because a lot of your job isn't just the audio, it's the visual.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like our mission statement for our business is we create rooms that inspire, and whether that be recording studios or churches or whatever we're doing, it just needs to be something that people really enjoy being in that room, and the visual part of that is a vast majority of what we're doing is combining the acoustical accuracy and that visual element that we're trying to do.
Before we continue on with the video, a quick word from our sponsor, the Worship Ministry School Accelerator Program. You may not know this, but in addition to all the YouTube content we're creating here at Churchfront, we also partner with local church worship and production ministries to help them hit their ministry goals. Over the past 4 years, we've worked personally with hundreds of worship ministries around the globe. We've helped churches navigate upgrading their worship tech, building better systems to grow their team of volunteers, as well as address any knowledge or skill gaps required for modern day worship ministry. When you join the Accelerator program, you get access to our entire library of online, on-demand courses, and you get unlimited access to our team of Churchfront coaches. To learn more about joining the program, click the link below this video to apply and schedule your free strategy session today. Now let's get back to the video. So you did this recording studio for this dude with a big beard. Never heard of him before.
Yeah, never. David Crowder.
Speaking of, yeah, just like the design, like the look of it is so cool. And man, just looking at I want to watch this video right now, but I'll watch it later. You guys should watch the video. Go to their YouTube channel. I'll link it below. Subscribe. They have a bunch of cool studio tours. It's like Architectural Digest meets Studio World. Basically.
No,
they do a great job. So
thank you.
Yeah, tell us about this studio.
So David reached out. I actually was first connected with David through my good friend Jacob Biz Morris. He's the head engineer at Reach Records. He does all of the music for like Lecrae and Andy Mineo and all those artists on Reach Records. He's friends with David, and David asked Biz if he could do a studio for him. He's like, I absolutely do it, but we got to bring Gavin in, you know. And so we tag team things a lot. Where Biz was also who was involved with the Tori Kelly project, and we did one for Victory World Church as well. But you know, I handled all the acoustics, and Biz handled all the gear integration and selection. Dave is just like the nicest guy in the world. Like he's such a genuine person. I mean, from the first day I stepped into his house, like he's just warm and welcoming. And his house is amazing. Like, and it's something where,
what city is he in?
He's in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Atlanta. And, kind of little known fact, if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas edition, Kevin Bacon's home is Crowder's house. Like that's where they filmed it.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, his house looks like a museum. It's amazing and modern. And sometimes people
now I got to look that up.
Yeah.
I want to see like the house tour.
Well, yeah. There's actually a People magazine house tour of David's space too.
Oh, wow.
Because David's wife, Tony, is like one of the best interior designers in Atlanta. And so their house is just amazing.
Wow.
But I knew walking in, I was like, wow, this is really modern. It wasn't really what I expected. Sometimes people will see Crowder and his beard and kind of his music, and they're just like, oh, it's going to be like this
southern
rustic thing. And
yeah, kind of like southern redneck-ish vibe or whatever. Yeah.
But this studio's not that at all.
That's
and so
cool.
we went with kind of an all white theme for the walls. One thing, people think that it's just drywall behind there, but you know, right where that artwork is in the center of that back wall, everything surrounding it that's white is actually fabric, and there's base trapping that's going on there, so insulation and diffusion materials behind it. That image there is actually printed on acoustically transparent fabric, but then in front of it is a plexiglass diffuser that scatters sound, and so you could still see the artwork, but it's just a cool visual, draw your eye to the back of the room. Those panels on the walls that have the perforations, they absorb some frequencies better than others, but then they'll reflect some of the high end to not make the room sound too dead. And but yeah, working with David, his big thing with this, and you'll see it in the YouTube video that we have, is just that he just wanted a space that was creative and on all the time. You know, like that synth rack that's in the back of his room, that one right up, yeah, that one right there. Every one of those is live at all times and directly plugged into his DAW to where there's no patching that needs to happen.
So clean.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no patching at all. There's just it's ready to record, and that's his big thing, because you get this spark of creativity, and if you're having to get your studio all set up, then
that's
you
the
lose
hardest thing, man. It's like And because I like tell my wife, I'm here. We're here at Sweetwater, by the way. I don't think we mentioned it, but every time I'm here, I see all the gear and I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool to have it. But then I'm like, I don't have anywhere to put it, and you got to set it up every time. And that's obviously, if you can get a studio, that kind of solves that problem. But
yeah. And
man,
the nice thing too is that he didn't have to worry about sound isolation. It's just him and his wife at home, and he's like, I don't really care too much about the sound bleeding out of this space. A lot of jobs we do, that's a main focus, where they'll have a spot in the basement, but the only spot they have is directly below their kid's bedroom or something like that. And isolation's the hardest thing to deal with in our job. Like it's very construction heavy, and there's so many details that go into it. Making a room sound great is an art and a science on its own, but it's easier. It's at least something that's a little more manageable. But there's all these custom elements and in this space, and it's actually become an inspiration for other clients. Like after we did this room, I think it's the first one that we did mostly white rooms, but you see Tyler Joseph's sunroom studio there.
Oh man,
that's all white. That's the lead singer of 21 Pilots. That was one we did his basement studio where he wrote Trench and Scaled and Icy, those albums. But then he just wanted some sunlight, he wanted some space, and so we ended up converting this sunroom into a studio, and that's where he's writing the new album. So
it's so pretty. Makes me want to drop $1 million on a home and that I don't have, and then another like 500,000 at Sweetwater on all the gear to spec it out.
So Tori, again, she was friends with Biz, who got us involved as well. And she started in a bedroom just doing YouTube covers and things like that. And so now that she's successful and her husband bought their first house in LA, she's like, I'd love to have a studio here. And again, isolation wasn't a part of this project. It was more just, I want a good, high quality sounding room that feels comfortable. And this is one I don't ever do this, but I flew out and installed everything myself too, like all the panels, and I just wanted it to be perfect for her. And again, like David as well, but Tori and her husband are like the most genuine, sweet people. I asked for a hotel of where I could stay near their place, and she's like, "No, you stay with us. Like we've got a guest room," and she's just doing laundry while I'm installing the treatment in her studio. But she was also rehearsing while I was doing it because she had a show that night, and she doesn't miss a note, even just rehearsing. Like she's so talented. And the timing of this was great. Same with David's. They both got finished up around 2 or 3 months before the pandemic started. I saw Tori probably did 7 or 8 late night talk show, just streaming from her studio. And she recorded a lot of her most recent album in there. I think her new one that's coming out soon, she recorded in there as well. Worked with Babyface in that room too. So it's just a nice, comfortable room to be in.
This seems like an actual, like a more modest project. Like it's not like
it is,
insane.
Yep. Yeah, all the
David Crowder's studio is insane.
Yes,
this is like, I think I could actually have something similar to this.
And that was kind of the goal. Like she just wanted it to be pretty simple. All the treatment in here is from a company called Acoustical Fulfillment that I'm a partner in. But it's the hexagon panels on the front wall. They're all different depths. Some of them have that perforated facing to it to make it a little bit more lively in there. And then behind the couch, if you scroll down to the next photos, there's that product on the wall that has the clear shield and that's a product I designed and got a patent for some years back, but it's a diffuser when you want it to be and an absorber when you want it to be. So you can like pop that shield in and out and it changes the way the room sounds.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. And for her, it works perfect because she's mostly recording acoustic guitar and vocals. And so when the acoustic guitar comes out, the shields go in, it makes it more vibrant and lively. And then when she's doing vocals, she can pop the shields out and then it's more dead. So
that's cool.
It's really neat
because that's the point of diffusion, is to have a little bit more of the energy still bouncing around the room.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. You don't, absorption takes energy out of the room and makes it sound more dead or dry is a term that people use. Whereas diffusion, it handles all those harsh reflections that you don't want off of those surfaces, but it just spreads it back into the room and keeps that openness. And so it's a really nice way. A lot of studios
It'd be cool if even if a church did that. Like if you I don't know how big you can make those, but like the same idea. Imagine if you could like tweak depending on the event you're doing, you know, tweak it for, oh, we got choir and organ, and then that, like, oh, now we've got a band, so we need to have more absorption.
Yeah, we do that sometimes. This product, it would take a long time to add or remove 100 of those shields. However, in churches, we do this a lot where there may be some curtain systems that we can open and close automatically and make it more lively or more dead. Or there's some performance halls we've done where there's a reverb chamber and louvers for that, where you can open it at varying degrees, and then some of that reverberation comes back into the room. And there's even automated banners that can come up and down and change the way the room sounds. It's always more expensive to do an adaptive treatment like that, but especially when you have, you know, organ and choir is one goal and then speech is another. Those are like polar opposites as far as reverb time requirements go, because you know, the best orchestra halls in the world have reverb times in like the 2.5 to 2.8 second range, but for speech you'd want it to be around 1 to 1.2, and that's just, it's hard to do that with just off-the-shelf treatment. You're going to sacrifice somewhere.
The Belonging Co. I visited here before, and it sounded amazing when I was there.
Awesome.
So that was back in 21, I think is when I actually went there. So Therap Space was retrofitted from a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just again, kind of similar where it was drywall in there, but they had a steel ceiling, you know, concrete floor. You know, handling it with treatment from acoustical fulfillment was in there. But Diversified brought us in on this job as well. But it's just one of those things where we're always trying to model out the space and figure out what their worship style is, like what our goals are. And in their case, you know, it's a very modern worship style, and there's a lot of energy, and so usually that tends to be a little bit lower on the reverbs time side of things, and that allows them to, if they want that extra reverb, they could add it digitally if they wanted to. But yeah, we have acoustical panels on the walls and then also on the ceiling, which are disguised in a lot of them, but you can see a few of them
like
there.
this?
Yep.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, that's a night panel, which is just naturally it comes in black, and it just blends in with those ceilings that are painted black.
So it seems like the rule of thumb for a lot of churches that have modern worship style, you want to have closer to that 1 second reverb, and then for vocals or instruments, you can emulate that with your effects.
You could,
if you need more reverb.
Yeah, it all depends on. It's a little bit subjective of what people like, but I always just try to have conversations with churches and make sure that we're just serving them well, so that they can serve the congregation well.
Is there a project that what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
You know, I don't know. I love the David Crowder project. I mean, that was really, really fun to do because not only is it a great sounding space, but just visually it's stunning. Like, people walk in there and they feel like they're on another planet. You know, it's such a neat space. I would say that doing the jobs for the guys from 21 Pilots, Josh Dunn's studio is pretty amazing. We could talk a little bit about that.
This one was literally featured in Architectural Digest too,
yes.
right? Like,
yeah,
because the studio was done by the time they did the tour of the house. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and it's just such a creative, cool space. Like on
that drum set, what in the world?
Yeah, so that's SJC made a custom drum set that front face of that kick drum is solid wood, and you would think that it wouldn't sound so great, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a whole tree themed, and we talk about it in the YouTube video, like why they did that. But if you scroll down even further on the page, there's I think towards maybe the last photo. There we go. So this is a room above the studio that these famous artists named Dabs Mila from Australia, they painted this as a mural. Wow. And when it's directly above the drum room, and I asked, like, hey, if you could get us 10 more feet of that image, to continue that on as you go through the floor, then it goes into the drum room, which is a continuation of that with all the flowers.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's all printed on acoustical fabric, and there's like bass trapping and diffusion and things that are happening behind it, but visually you just see artwork. So it's pretty stellar. He's got a control room there as well. You can see that looks into the drum room. You see the flowers through there.
Yep.
And it's more subdued, but there's some cool lighting that you can do in there to change the vibe of the space. And of course, you've got Jim the dog. Jim is awesome. Also has like 300,000 plus followers on Instagram. Yeah. He's a very famous dog. But he's in the video. There's a cool moment with the dog that you should check out. But But yeah, that was a fun project because, obviously it's a highly creative space that it's very Josh and Debbie. His wife is Debbie Ryan, the actress who had that show Jessie on Disney. So
yeah,
they're very cool people.
You've worked with some pretty cool people. I
Absolutely,
think we saw Michael Jordan on your list there too.
Yeah.
If you go to your kind of notable clients,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, Ringo Starr, Coldplay, a rehearsal studio. That's cool.
Yeah, it's I just feel real blessed with what I get to do. Like my background's mechanical engineering with a robotics focus, but I've been a musician my whole life, and so being able to combine those, and I've been doing this for 22 years now. My business has been around for 14, and like I'm always shocked by the opportunities that show up to us, and I mean, we try to do a good job for everyone, and it's a lot of word of mouth and referrals, and
yeah. How did it start? Like, did you start with in kind of the church space, and then get referrals to the more like secular artist world, or vice versa? Like,
it just varies. Like I used to be head of engineering at a company called Orlex Acoustics that manufactures acoustical materials.
Yep.
So I did that for 8 years before I started my business, and a lot of it is just the referrals that come in. Like we have good relationships with a lot of different AV integrators and dealers, and like we do home theaters, but we just don't have a lot of referral sources on that front. We have a lot in the studio and church world.
Yep.
And what I love about what we do is that all the jobs are different, and so you don't get burned out doing one thing over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, our studios, none of them look the same, and I like that as well because it's not just rinse and repeat. But yeah, our referral sources are kind of varied, and so I'd say like about 70% is studios and 30% are churches and larger spaces. And it's just sometimes I blink and I'm just like, man, what? How did we get to this point where we get to do these cool things?
Well, guys, you can go to haverstickdesigns.com to see everything that we just talked about in this video if you want to poke around these projects. And of course, just hit that contact button up here, right? If they want to reach out to you guys. If you're a church, if you're looking to build the studio, if you're a church looking to build a studio, right? Because now like having broadcast studios is a pretty common thing. Or just having cool creative spaces that you can film stuff, record stuff. It's really cool to see. In my opinion, I think the church is kind of leading the way a lot, for the broader creative culture of like these things that we have to figure out
for sure,
acoustically and creatively. So reach out to their team and check out their YouTube channel where you've got those awesome tours of all of these studios. So I'll link that down below.